underrated survival horror games, Echo Night Trilogy. Today, we'll take a look at how the Echo Night survival horror games were able to bring a deep, layered, emotional narrative to the genre that we all love. The survival horror genre was still running strong by the end of the 1990s, and it had found its stride. Popular titles like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and Clock Tower were in full swing, and the emerging genre was taking lots of bold chances. It's easy for certain titles to fade into oblivion in an industry rife with half-baked releases, but it's more unfortunate when such games are actually fantastic. Echo Night premiered on the PlayStation in 1998 and spawned a whole trilogy from FromSoftware, who are now best known for the punishingly tough Souls series. Echo Night is like a cross between Fatal Frame and Eternal Darkness. It's a game series with a powerful blend of a grandiose storyline, a more intimate horror approach, and a repetitive yet fulfilling and engaging gameplay arrangement. These outstanding survival horror games have been hidden in the shadows for decades, but now is the moment to shine your torch on them. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Echo Night, 1998. The core plot of Echo Night is a generational narrative of demon possession, in which a son attempts to solve a murder mystery that his father became embroiled in while attempting to exorcise these evil forces without being possessed. There's also a significant evil crimson knife that was used in a murder and is still being passed down the generations and utilized in heinous acts. This finally culminates in a story reminiscent of MCU's Infinity Gems storyline, in which a particular soul stone is thought to have the capacity to change someone's fate and rewrite the past, but only if a huge sacrifice is made. Echo Night is a superb puzzle horror combination in which the scares come from the plot and content rather than from fighting the creatures. The gameplay is in first person and considerably more puzzle-oriented, yet the puzzles are really fulfilling, just tough enough, and tie into a horrific plot. It occasionally seems like a first-person horror RPG in the greatest conceivable sense, right down to the aesthetic and design choices. There's also the rule that ghosts can only move in the dark, so you'll need to switch on the lights to keep them away. The core plot is as follows. Henry Osmond lead a double life. There's a lot more to him than you may think. Henry, who appears to be an artist, is actually a hotshot demon catcher whose untimely disappearance kicks off the game and offers young Richard Osmond, the show's hero, something to look into. Richard discovers a mystery book while visiting his father's burned-out wreckage, and this finding propels him back into the past for the first of his super-sleuthing time travels. The game control is similar to that of Myst, but much more dynamic. You control a flying star-shaped cursor to explore your surroundings in this first-person shooter. Anything that piques your curiosity causes this star to glow in a shade of brilliant blue, signaling that you should study it, pick it up, utilize it, or talk to it with one of the controller buttons. Another notable feature of Echo Night is that it takes place on a boat, train, mine shafts, hotel, and other locations that are unusual for a computer game, let alone a horror title. The game's pass-hopping technique, which not only works but also feels a little scary, is responsible for these unusual places. It gets really strange when you're hopping from one memory to another, and you're operating on an Inception level of depth from the main story as you wander through previous events like a ghost. As you work through the numerous levels of this overarching mystery, the game takes on an episodic horror aspect, especially when the significance of these brief memories aren't always evident. There's no disputing that the graphics in this game are a little rough. This isn't due to any issues with clipping or models, but rather to the low polygon counts and shaky textures. These textures are inconsistent. Some are great, while others are so poor that it's sometimes difficult to identify what you're looking at. And even worse, it's tough to tell some doors from the wall around them. This is obviously undesirable, but it does imply that loading times are short. Tsukasa Saito and Kota Hoshino's music is fantastic, with just the proper amount of expectation and dread to create a palpable feeling of suspense. It's a pity there isn't more of it. The sound effects are limited, but when they do appear, they blend in seamlessly. From the rattling of the corpse-strewn train on the tracks to the ominous creaking of the liner's wooden decks, they sound just as they should. This game understands how to generate a creepy atmosphere. And there are some memorable situations. There's an unsettling merry-go-round portion, a creepy blind shopkeeper guy with psychic skills, and a casino excursion where you must play roulette, slot machines, and blackjack against a swarm of ghosts. There are a lot of jump scares that are genuinely creepy. To add to the game's character portrayal, they all have little language, but it comes off as awkward and terrifying in a way that's quite effective, gives it a more dreamlike quality. The fact that the bulk of these characters are ghosts gives their discourse a sarcastic, lost tone, which is fantastic. For example, there's a character who witnesses the birth of a demon and loses his mind. As a result of it, giving each of these spirits closure and assisting them in moving on is strangely fulfilling, but it's also a very depressing trip at times. Echo Night 2: The Lord of Nightmares. All three games in the Echo Night series have garnered positive reviews ranging from ordinary to excellent. Although Echo Night 2: The Lord of Nightmares has received the best critical response of the bunch, it's all the more disappointing that it's the only game in the series that hasn't been released in North America or Europe. Echo Night 2 is essentially a remake of the original game. It has the same theme and plot as the last film, and stars Richard Osmond. But this time, it concentrates around him attempting to figure out what happened to his love, Christina. The game once again revolves on a sacred stone to which murder offerings must be made in order for desires to be granted. The sequel focuses on a generational quest for immortality and the transmissions of the Soul Stone down through the generations. Echo Night 2: The Lord of Nightmares expands on the theme by introducing a mystery female character who encourages Richard on his trip. She appears to dislike the fact that you're assisting in the closure of these ghosts and would rather you didn't. As you strive to be their angel, she's like the devil on all of these characters and spirits' shoulders. Along these lines, it's exciting to watch how the game simply refines the original's themes, weaves a more complex plot, and presents a more polished overall presentation. This game does a lot more with time travel, but via the same areas, so it might be interesting to see how the same settings have changed and degraded through time. In a similar vein, the game this time offers the ghosts considerably more backstories and personalities. You're also returning a lot more of lost relics to them, which adds to the fun of the astral pieces process. There are also basic yet unpleasant features in the settings, such as lingering blood trails on the floor where a body has been dragged. The sequel has a more occult feel to it, which the game makes good use of. Echo Night 2 contains a number of moments that are out of the ordinary for a survival horror game. There are puzzles involving piano music composition, game of hide and seek with a spirit girl, a waltz sequence, and a poker game between ghosts, and the finest blimp explosion you'll ever see in a horror game. Water-based mobility in a slow as you navigate through underground channels is also included in some portions, which adds to the game's gloomy ambience. The game's dramatic clash takes place on the mounting steps of a clock tower, which is also an excellent way to conclude the game. Richard also matures from childhood to maturity as he constantly exits and enters a room in a beautiful sequence. Even more than its predecessor, the game understands how to get inside your thoughts. Echo Night Beyond 2005. The game takes you all the way to 2044, and there is no holding back when it comes to its futuristic nature. Richard Osmond is on his way to the moon when the mission crashes and he becomes the sole survivor. While there was variation in the monsters that appeared in survival horror games at this period, the locations in which they were placed remain quite unchanged. All the wrecks, calamities that may occur out there are a visual delight. The very idea of ghosts on the moon may sound insane, but it really makes sense when you play the game. Things are dramatically different now that it's situated on the moon, but Echo Night Beyond keeps the "can only gets wounded in the dark" feature and gives Richard a flashlight. In many respects, it feels like a prototype for Alien Isolation and Silent Hill: The Room, especially in terms of how it produces some of its horrors. Despite its peculiarities, it's still a good game, similar to the others, and it wraps off the trilogy well. It's also much scarier and more stressful than the previous two Echo games, and it embraces the horror of the title rather than the more investigative components of the prior games. The game attacks immediately, and not only with ghosts. Unstable rubber and malfunctioning machines rapidly create a tense environment, and the game understands exactly where to place the appropriate jump scares. When you have to dash through a dark corridor to get to a new room, and you know you'll be vulnerable to ghosts for that little period of time, the stress is palpable. Echo Night Beyond has various unique novel elements, such as a degree of weightlessness to locations and a heart rate monitor where Richard's pulse rate will rise when spirits are approaching or something is ready to strike, much like the prior titles, which were innovative for their time. Security camera video is also used to create some great scenarios and scares, and it becomes a prominent gameplay mechanic. A gripping murder mystery revolving around the Red Stone is also told through the security camera video, which is a creative approach to present this story that isn't connected to Richard. Surprisingly, despite the fact that Echo Night Beyond modifies and updates in the game, it retains the essential ghost saving and using light as a weapon aspects of the original games. It only adds to the terror. It's a surprisingly gratifying updated sequel, although many titles, particularly survival horror games, have failed miserably in their attempts to adapt to this gaming generation. Marvelous Gamer's Verdict. Echo Night contributed to the survival horror genre by delivering 3 consistent survival horror games. This isn't necessarily a series that needs to be revived, especially because Fatal Frame is essentially doing the same thing in a more efficient way, and FromSoftware has clearly gone on to brighter pastures. Regardless, it's still a shame that these games are so obscure, and that Echo Night 2 was never properly remade. It would be ideal to remaster the trilogy, or even just the first 2 games, so that new people can appreciate this important piece of survival horror gaming history. That's it for this one. Let us know in the comments which other games do you want us to talk about. If you are new here, then don't forget to subscribe in order to see new content that we post every day. See you in the next one.